California is building America's first full-scale high-speed rail line that would connect the major population and economic centers of San Francisco and Los Angeles. Once completed, the route would reduce the usual 6-hour drive between the two cities to just under 3 hours by high-speed train. However, this megaproject is facing some serious problems. Today, 3 years past its projected completion date, and almost $100 billion over budget, the project is still an entire decade from completion. In this video, we'll be taking a deep dive into America's most expensive infrastructure project and finding out what went wrong. If you enjoy these types of videos, be sure to subscribe and help us reach the 1 million subscriber milestone. First of all, we need to understand why the California high-speed rail is being built in the first place. The state of California is by far America's wealthiest and most populous state, with a GDP of $3.6 trillion US. It alone would be the 5th largest economy in the world. And with a population of almost 40 million, there are more people living in California compared to the entire neighboring country of Canada. Interestingly, much of this wealth is concentrated in only 2 key population centers located in San Francisco Bay and Greater Los Angeles. These 2 urban areas alone account for more than half of the entire state's population. Despite the economic importance of these 2 city centers, travel between them has always been extremely inefficient and time-consuming. On average, it takes around 6 hours to drive from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and that still does not take into account both cities' horrible traffic, which are consistently ranked as some of the worst in the entire country. The only existing alternative is to take a 90-minute domestic flight between the 2 cities, which is both expensive and bad for the environment. In an effort to create a faster, cheaper, and more environmentally friendly mode of transportation, the California High-Speed Rail Authority was established back in 1996. Its goal was to create the plans for a high-speed rail system that would connect all of the state's major population centers to each other. In 2008, the developers' plans were finally put into ballots all over California, with 53% of voters voting in favor of the project's construction. A $9 billion bond authorization was passed through the same vote, which signaled the start of the project. The initial plan for the California high-speed rail was divided into 2 phases of construction. The first phase would connect San Francisco and Los Angeles through the Central Valley, while passing through major cities such as Merced, Fresno, and Bakersfield. This 800-kilometer track would also go through extremely mountainous terrain, wherein at least 24 kilometers of tunnels are needed. The first phase also calls for the upgrade of the existing commuter rail system within San Francisco, which is planned to support a blended system that would both accommodate the new high-speed system and the old local commuter trains. The second phase would extend the tracks even further north up to Sacramento, the state's capital, and further south up until San Diego, near the border with Mexico. This extension would bring the length of the entire high-speed rail system to a total of 1,300 kilometers spread across 24 stations. The entire project was estimated to cost $33 billion at the time. California's high-speed rail was scheduled to open by the year 2020, and it promised to connect San Francisco to Los Angeles in just 2 hours and 40 minutes, with top speeds of as much as 350 kilometers per hour. The project would also have provided many different benefits to California. For one, the high-speed rail system would have significantly reduced the amount of pollution and carbon emissions of the state, as more people would choose the greener option instead of flying the entire route. The project would also improve passenger travel by reducing the amount of air and vehicular traffic, thus making travel times between the 2 cities more efficient. Finally, one of the most important benefits of this project would be the tremendous amounts of economic opportunities it would bring to the millions of people living in the Central Valley.
This is truly a California project bringing us together today. Thank you very much.
So all this sounds great, but what went wrong? Today, 15 years after Californians voted for the high-speed rail back in 2008, the situation has become very different. Faced with plenty of financial, legal, and environmental roadblocks, the 2020 deadline has long expired, and its current future is much more uncertain. One major problem the megaproject has continuously faced is that from the very beginning, the California High-Speed Rail Authority never really had the budget to construct the entire system. Back when the project was approved in the 2008 vote, only $9 billion of the estimated $33 billion to construct the entire system was secured by the project's developers. The remaining amount was planned to be covered primarily by the federal government, with $12 to $16 billion, $6 to $7.5 billion from public-private partnerships, and finally $2 to $3 billion from local governments. The project relied heavily on funding mainly coming from Washington, but 2 years after the 2008 vote, Congress had only allocated $3 billion of the supposed 16. As of the most recent estimates, the cost of completing just the first phase of the project, which would connect Los Angeles to San Francisco, has now ballooned to as much as $128 billion because of inflation and rising construction and material costs. And with little to no support coming from the federal government, it remains unclear as to where the developers will find the necessary funding. Despite the ballooning costs of the project, a significant amount of time, money, and labor has already been sunk into its construction. As of the most recent figures, almost $10 billion have already been spent for both legal and construction costs. Additionally, a substantial amount of infrastructure has already been built along key segments of the route, which includes bridges, viaducts, and underpasses. Other than the obvious financial problems, the nature of America's legal system is also contributing to the countless delays suffered by the project. For one, the state of California is known for its strict environmental policies and laws. Even securing the necessary clearance to build a megaproject of this size is a monumental task on its own. In fact, the environmental clearing process alone has already cost the project's developers as much as $1.3 billion of their already limited budget. With the initial 2020 deadline already 3 years behind, the plans for the California high-speed rail have changed to give way to its financial setbacks. For one, instead of the continuous route from Los Angeles to San Francisco, a smaller segment is currently being constructed from Merced to Bakersfield. This particular segment was chosen to be constructed first because it was determined to be the cheapest section to build across the entire system. Much of the route between Merced and Bakersfield is flat rural farmland that can easily be acquired and developed by the project's proponents. This smaller segment is expected to finish construction by the year 2033 at the latest, and is currently the top priority of the project's developers. Once completed, commuters will have the option to transfer from Merced through existing normal trains to San Jose, Sacramento, or San Francisco. Meanwhile, on the southern end at Bakersfield, commuters can transfer through bus services, which will take them to Los Angeles and the rest of Southern California. By constructing only this part of the tracks first, commuters will be able to travel from San Francisco to Los Angeles, even though the rest of the high-speed tracks haven't been completed. Once the Merced to Bakersfield segment is completed, construction on the remaining tracks leading up to both Los Angeles and San Francisco will begin, finally completing the original Phase 1 of the construction. However, it still remains unclear as to when this phase would even begin construction, given the project's lack of funding. Meanwhile, the original Phase 2 of the project that would extend the tracks north to Sacramento and south to San Diego is currently in the early planning stages, with no concrete timeline or details regarding its eventual construction. So, what do Californians think about this? As the high-speed rail project has proved to be extremely costly and riddled with construction delays, many people are rightfully skeptical of its viability. Many people argue that even with the updated plans of the smaller segment, there's no guarantee that people would actually use it. In fact, the Merced to Bakersfield route is often regarded by media outlets as the train to nowhere.
Could this really end up being a train to nowhere?
Given the city's populations only being 90,000 and 400,000 respectively. Another major criticism of the project is the obvious lack of funding that has continuously been one of the major setbacks for its success. And things got even worse when the Trump administration pulled more than $900 million in funding for the project when it failed to make reasonable progress on the construction. Critics also cite unrealistic ridership projections, increasing cost projections, and unacquired parcels of land as some of the other reasons to oppose the panel's construction. On the other hand, many people are still optimistic about the project's future, given what has already been accomplished. For one, 680 of the total 800 kilometers for the entire project have already been environmentally cleared. They also plan to fully clear the entire route by the end of 2023. Currently, some 190 kilometers are also being constructed in the Bakersfield to Merced route, with significant progress being reported ever since the groundbreaking ceremony back in 2015. As of October 2022, roughly 40% of the guideways have already been completed, with major crossings such as the San Joaquin and Fresno River viaducts already being completely built. Additionally, the project has recently celebrated the milestone of generating 10,000 jobs, with workers primarily coming from the impoverished and largely underserved Central Valley. People living in the area also hope that once the project finishes construction, it would bring economic growth and unlock opportunities for millions of people in the region. Aside from the social and economic benefits of the project, the newly elected administration led by Joe Biden is more supportive of rail infrastructure compared to the previous Trump administration. With this, the project hopes to have a better shot at receiving the much-needed federal funds. What is your opinion about the California high-speed rail project? Do you think America is ready for high-speed rail? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.